being an Indian by birth and by acculturation, and therefore associated with the family tradition, which is fundamental to the Indian social system. There are certain presumed obligations. Traditional Indian society has a very firm basis in presumed social obligations. In other parts of the world where society doesn't have a traditional order, at least of that kind, and particularly, for instance, in America, where people come from all over the world, and there's also just a kind of society of conventions such as they are in America. The order of obligation is not quite so clear. So everyone is somebody's son or daughter. Living in America, again, depending on what kind of family you come from, though also what traditions associated, because there's not only a general American society, everyone also is associated with some kind of family traditions or family expectations, depending on the background and where the parents and so forth have come from, and on and on. So there's a different kind of view of obligation associated with every individual in a country such as America, whereas in a country such as India, even though it is becoming more fragmented and complicated and losing much of its traditional basis, nonetheless, there still is a continuation of some of that fundamental tradition of social expectation, particularly in certain orders of Indian society. And in that circumstance, the social expectations are fiercely held on to, fiercely upheld. And in fact, the psychology, the very sense of sanity or well-being of people in that kind of circumstance, or acculturated in that manner, depends on them either fulfilling or somehow satisfactorily dealing with those expectations. Whereas in a somewhat looser social situation, such as might be the case in America, people are expected to be even somewhat more so anyway, independent, and allowed to be more independent. And so matters of psychological well-being and so forth have a different basis, or at least to some degree different. But it's very strongly about fulfilling these social obligations if you are acculturated as a traditional Indian person, as it would be in certain other countries also, especially Oriental countries. Other parts of the world also. But you see it frequently in systems of Asian societies, such as that of India or China or Japan and so on. Very strong expectations of doings on the part of family members. And you don't just fail to do it. If you fail to do it, you can also have all kinds of psychological problems just from that, because it's part of the psyche. So you have to answer for this. You are not only Indian by birth and acculturation, you also live in America, are habituated as Americans are to some significant degree. And then you also are my devotee, and you have various possibilities that you could embrace in service and so forth as my devotee. So there's at least 3 different directions there, you see. And you want a some kind of principle of guidance to be indicated to you, as if there actually were a logical basis for guidance, when there isn't. Essentially, your circumstance is rather chaotic. You are Indian, you are American, you are my devotee, and my hermitage, principal hermitage, is in Fiji. So, who are you to serve, when were you to go, what are you to do? And no matter what you do, you are wrong. And so you can make a judgment based on evaluating all of the different motives you have, and whichever one you choose, you will have a residual feeling of having done something wrong. So perhaps the best guidance is that you're going to have to deal with this feeling of having done something wrong. In other words, this is part of the psychological business that you're going to have to handle, rather than look for some way to feel completely right in the midst of such a complex circumstance of presumed obligations and opportunities. So you won't be able to please all of those different expectations. You will have to relinquish or deny or frustrate somebody or some level of expectation. And so you have to clarify it or become somehow or other concentrated or one-pointed through your own effort. You have to come to a position about just exactly what are you doing being alive. What are you actually purposed to, most fundamentally? And then altogether, what do you have to take into account in your life?